Welcome. This is Ralph Bivins of the Ralph Bivins Project. We're here today to talk about kind of a historical site that has just played a big role in about what Houston's about, how we develop our land. Made a big splash. Started in 2007, but it's been a big deal, and help us think again about Houston. No zoning. What does that really mean?
Right.
And of course, it's a beautiful neighborhood, a beautiful place, and now the land's been lying fallow, and we're coming back to it now. And so we're really happy to have Stephen Meek, who's with StreetLights Residential, and they've just introduced plans for a new project there. So welcome, Stephen. And
thank you.
Glad
it's such a pleasure.
For me too. And we're just tell us a little bit. We're talking about the site Ashby Highrise is way a lot of people read the paper,
Sure.
about it, and the protesters came out, the neighborhood, that project was introduced. I think they started on it in 2007, and we're it's still there as a piece of grass, a 2-acre piece of grass, business at Ashby, about a mile from about a mile west of the Houston Museum of Fine Arts.
Right.
So, tell me about, it probably took a lot of courage to jump back into the site that had generated so much, controversy and things in the past. So you guys, StreetLights jumps in, and you announced the plan, you're ready to go. Tell me about what your vision is.
Right. Well, I'm going to first start by saying that I'd say research was probably more that it took than courage. Certainly there is the idea of the Ashby, which I've only learned, a few months ago. That was a name that the neighborhood gave to that development so they could set up a campaign against it. Certainly controversial. I'm not worried about them so much. I'm worried more about construction costs now. I'm more worried about the cycle that we're in than I am about the neighbors.
Have you had interaction with the neighbors yet? I drove by there yesterday, and there aren't any new signs. It used to be 10 years ago, there were all these huge, big black and yellow signs saying, the Monster Tower, the stop Ashby Highrise now, and
Tower of Traffic.
Yeah, Tower of Traffic all over the neighborhood. Wow. But those are gone now.
Well, there's some still residual signs of that building, but we're not building the Ashby. It's a very different building. But I want to first start with the property. It's 1.6 acres. It actually, there's no historic overlay on it. So technically, if you're from a city dealing with zoning matters and local committees and planning commissions and city council, there is no zoning history or historic overlay. It's certainly an historic
news. It was big news for in the papers for a long time.
Right. It is an historic neighborhood. The neighborhood is affluent. They are in 2-story buildings. They're residential. They don't like the idea, likely, of something of that scale, massing, height, traffic impact, all of that. So, but there's significant differences to back then when that whole campaign started against the development and today. First of all, the fact that the building case was litigated, there was a lawsuit between the city and the developer, the city arrived at a settlement agreement that says if you do these things, there are several things that are restrictions related to that property. If you abide by these, we'll hand you a building permit. We don't have to submit a plan that way, and we can just submit a plan. But we read those and we realized, listen, we can't have a car exit to Ashby out of the garage, for example, and turn south into that neighborhood. So people live on rock stamp, et cetera. We're not doing that. We're following and abiding by those guidelines. So the issue was litigated by the city, and then the neighborhood came with the lawsuit later, and then the neighborhood got to the appellate court, and the neighbors lost. And they spent money on legal fees. They lost. So did the developer and their partner, the Hunt Company, who had come into the venture right before the neighborhood sued. They were ready to demo, I think. Well, they did demo. There was an older apartment community there before. But certainly, in my view, and I've been involved in redevelopment and urban development and new urbanism, and why do you want to live in this type of a neighborhood? Live, work, play, walkable, close to employment, close to retail. I mean, I'll probably take a bike ride more than a long walk to get to the village, but you've got a lot of options there. We're not going out in the suburbs, tearing down trees and, having environmental impacts like that. We're taking an infill site. It's not its highest and best use as a lot or as an old apartment building. So then it's just a matter of what are we going to do? So we develop, and we have developed, say 40 buildings. I don't think the original sponsor, the Buckhead guys, who were great guys, had that on their resume. They didn't have, like we do, an in-house design team to really do a design build process, because we also have a self-performing in-house construction company. And we've done a few $1 billion of this. And every property, Ralph, has its own challenges, whether it's the neighborhood, city, construction costs. This is a problem-solving business. But what we will do will bring something beautiful to the neighborhood, replace what's there, and provide an active. We're going to add color to a black and white map, as far as I'm concerned. There's a lot of color around it, but there's a hole right there that's black and white.
Well, you announced this early May, and right. I haven't. Like I said, I drove by there yesterday. I didn't see any new signs, and I haven't heard much in the letters to the editor. They could be planning and scheming in secret, but I haven't heard anything.
I'm not worried. Yeah. I'm really not worried. I do think that they will have angst, and they want to know, how will we build it? What's the construction impact? But I did meet with the two board presidents and a couple of gentlemen, head of the board of Boulevard Oaks and of Southampton. And, one of them asked, do you have to build a high-rise? Yes, we do. This is a high-rise site. We're not going to build student housing. We're not building, it's not big enough land to build a 4-story wrap. We're building a building that is a legacy building. We are building it with a long-term business plan in mind, with the investment that we have, that for 10, 20, 30 years. Whenever you develop, and this is very different than the brokerage side of the business. I heard your last interview. When you develop, you change the landscape for decades. So you can build something terrible, unaesthetic, cheap, a commodity. That really describes, I think, a lot of the multifamily developers. So our view is, let's thoughtfully design and craft a building that will stand the test of time architecturally, and fill up with people that live in that neighborhood and others like it, who want to be able to sell their home and not have to move to a condo or out of town. Live, after the sale, still live in a neighborhood that has all the things they love. That's it.
Now we're talking here about, I believe the announced figure is 134 units.
That's correct.
And they're rental, and they're large, but relatively large compared to the market of a typical apartment. I was just wondering, is anybody, do you know, I haven't quite seen a traffic thing before as it relates to multifamily. If there's a formula, like there's 100 units, that's going to generate, this many cars coming out in and out every day. If there's 100 units, everybody's got 2 cars. they come and go. You know, that's, I don't know. There could be 400 ins and outs a day, but of course, not everybody leaves at the same time or gets off work at the same time. Whatever.
Sure.
What is it about? Is there a numerical thing? Because
yes, there is.
You're building 134 units. You're estimated, and maybe there could be, 10 or 12 people or something that actually work there, maintenance and things of that nature. So out of 134 units, what do you think that's going to generate in terms? Because that was a big deal. You remember the signs? Tower traffic. The neighborhood said tower
traffic. So here's the good news, and I explained this to the neighborhood representatives when I met. And they care about their neighborhood, and they love their neighborhood, and we're there because we love the neighborhood. It's very similar to the Highland Park adjacent property, the McKinsey that we developed. The proposed project that has this history that was labeled the Ashby had 232 residential units and 10,075 square feet of retail on the ground floor. Retail, is a big traffic generator as well. So here we have a more exclusive residential building serving the community that has not exactly half, but 100 fewer units out of 232. Larger units, that's going to appeal to a different profile. We don't even have 1 bedrooms in the plant, Ralph. We just large 2s and 3. So from 2,600 and something feet on a 2-bedroom, which is very sizable, to a 3-bedroom, 3.5 of say 3,300 or so, we average about 2,900 square feet.
Wow.
There's nothing like it. So we had the same traffic study firm do a traffic study. The declaration of restrictive covenants, the agreement between the city and the developer, calls for a maximum traffic impact, I believe, of 115 trips per hour maximum. Our traffic study updated, we've already done the field work, is I believe 57. Yeah. I'm not sure if I didn't have that information when I met with those leaders, but so we had the standard was set up here for traffic impact. That was one of the biggest concerns, and we're delivering something that would generate that much less.
Yeah, this net ought to be, it is kind of a commercial street when you get down to the west there. So it's but 57 cars. Maybe I think you've hit on a good idea to reduce the number of units and not put in retail.
That's right.
And you mentioned they're really big. What did you say? Average size of 2,900 square feet.
That's right. There's nothing like it, Rob.
That's big. What would you? I know we're kind of. I don't think it's going to open for a couple of years or so, but maybe 25. I think. What do you anticipate? Monthly rental rate would be for. I know it's hard. Inflation's up like crazy right now. You never know. It may $1 may be worth 50 cents by the time this thing opens. But
well, you're talking about the savings we have in our 401k.
Yeah, used to. No. So what about typical rental rates?
Well, I'm going to tell you, at the McKinsey, we're about $440 a foot on a smaller unit average. We're 100% leased. It's a very sticky rent roll, that would mean that we're doing longer leases than typical in a multifamily building. And our residents, once they move in, they don't really want to move unless they moved in because they will take 2 years to build a house nearby or something. But it's a slow turnover rate on that rent roll, and our rents we actually have a penthouse we leased at $672 a square foot. So, around $20,000 a month. So I would say probably, I'm just looking at the math on the average square footage, even at 2875 times, say, even 4, that's 11.5. So it'll be in a comparable range to their home without, but with the safety of the building, security, and not having the maintenance cost and not having property taxes. And, in Highland Park, I mean, some of those people, they've come in and rented. Now, those are smaller units, so a smaller average, maybe a 7,000 and 7,500 up to 20. Our property taxes are almost $3, value. If you're in a $5 million home, which many of these residents have moved from, it's a substantial, that's actually a savings just to come in and get off the property taxes. You add a mortgage to that, and you add maintenance and the hassle of the maintenance, not just the cost.
Yeah, arranging people to come and waiting for them, and they never come. I got it.
So, Ralph, this is a community building that people would live in, that it's targeting a certain segment. How many apartment developments have you seen in the city? And all you have to do is look at the unit mix, where there's so many studios, so many ones, there's twos, but a lot of small ones, very few threes, that you're going to have this much space. You're going to have a community of people that have already succeeded in their businesses. They're well-traveled, typically well-educated, successful financially. I believe our rent roll at the McKinsey, the average age is 57, and the average income is not far off $1 million a year. Okay, this is not your ordinary multifamily building. Is my point.
No, it's not.
But we think the target market's there. I think they're ignored. All you have to do is look at the unit mix. The developers, all these big high rises that have come up, and there have been 20, 30 since, or 20 or so. We've done 3 of them in Houston. Their average typically is maybe 1,100 square feet. So there's a lot of 1-bedrooms and studios. That's missing my age and demographic and yours, but we might want that option, not own a condominium. I know Randall Davis announced another one off of River Oak. So
he did, yeah. It's right, not too far from Kirby over there on San Felipe.
That's right.
And he keeps starting. He never quits. He's been doing it for you. Yeah. And there's several further out San Felipe, outside the loop, northeast part of the Galleria, northwest part of the Galleria area here. It's a lot of expansion.
I read about that where in the article it talked about mansions in the sky. That was if that's the one you're referring to, that was a good phrase to talk about what we're doing. I mean, we have units with back kitchens.
Wow.
We have butler pantry, back kitchens. We have, just the high end appliances and.
It's your business and everything, Stephen, and you guys know what you're doing. But why build a rental? Why not build something that could sell a condo?
Well, it's very possible that in 10 years or so, we would not convert a condominium. The first answer is, why take on the construction defect litigation risk and expense for that insurance, as well as why have your architect and exposed for that risk? Why have some consultants don't want that coming back? I mean, so we clearly have, warranties and, all that type of stuff built in our budget. But we feel like, again, partly so in Dallas and the McKinsey, I mean, you can go down to Hall Arch Residences, Ritz-Carlton, or you can go to Austin and find these condos, and they're $1,000, $1,200 a foot. And you have now an investment in a condominium. You deal with an HOA board. Some people don't want an HOA board. They have to engage if they want to make a change. But these residents have a similar profile. They will show up, and they'll show up with their designer. Mm-hmm. And, they will spend money that maybe we didn't even spend to really make it a place that they plan on living in a long time. This is their home. And we believe in the sanctity of the home and address. The quality of where you live does convey a little bit of who you are as a person. And that's important to people. But, once you've lived in the grand house, there's a time where you think, you know what? We have a place in Colorado. Let's have there, and then we come back. We'll have a location near where our kids and maybe our grandkids go to school nearby. That's what's work.
It's good. It's a, it's the address 1717 Bissonnet.
That's right.
And of course, where they got the neighborhood came up with the name is Ashby, the little street called Ashby. So they just call it Ashby Highrise.
Right.
Understandable, and you're calling this the Langley.
That's right.
It like where the headquarters of the CIA is, I guess. Langley, Virginia.
Yeah, that's true. And we have lived, and I did grow up some in Alexandria as a young boy. But Langley is a family name on my wife's side.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And that's why it's the Langley. So our oldest daughter is Langley Meek Wall. And she and John, her husband, were the first residents that moved into the Ivy. John's in real estate, has a great company, 1912 Ventures. Langley works for Forrest Hoagland. He's been, he's a known name. She worked for Boone Pickens up here. She's, I love her and she's a terrific person. If she weren't my daughter, I would say that. So we like to name buildings after our children, and you're seeing that a lot.
Well, I think there are three in here in Houston: the James, the Ivy, and the Carter.
That's correct.
And those are all three.
Those are all names.
Yeah. Okay. Are they all three your kids?
No. So I get maybe an occasional opportunity, but it's really coming from the founder, Doug Chestnut, and who started the company in 2011, and Tom Bakewell, who worked with him at Gables. Doug ran the Western region for Gables, and he was with Trammell Crow before that. So Doug has the pick. He can make the selection. I did ask our partner at Hunt, Gary Sapp, if he would choose. He had the first choice. And then I think there was some issue with the name already having a website or something. So I said, well, our oldest daughter's Langley. What do you think? Great.
That's great. That's fantastic.
We have, we have a second daughter, Rachel Kennedy, and I love the Kennedy as a name as well. Yeah. Maybe some Republicans won't like it, but
well, at least Jack Kennedy, I think no matter what party you're with, people have a respect for JFK.
Absolutely.
Now this StreetLights Residential.
Yes, sir.
That's in Dallas.
Our corporate office is in Dallas, and we have offices in Phoenix, Atlanta, Orlando. We're doing a Nashville development out of Atlanta. So we have several offices. We have about 170 employees. If you come to our office, which if you come to Dallas, I invite you to come see it. It's quite the operation.
Okay.
It's quite the operation. It is a beehive of specialists who are very good at what they do. We might have someone that focused just on unit floor plans, someone that's focused on one aspect of the building system, and we have all these specialists, and we collaborate on crafting these buildings. We occasionally would use an outside architect, but we moved away from that when we were not satisfied with the quality of the product and the delivery time of the product. We're sitting there among all the other developers trying to get the architect to focus on our building. That's a killer in real estate. Time is a killer. So we brought inside under this dome, this talent. And how many development companies do you know that just focus on multifamily development that have 170 employees? They're all using outside consultants, and that carries the cost on the job itself. But we're taking a substantial risk, Doug is, and Tom, to bring that overhead in the house. We also have an in-house construction company, and we have that risk of cost overruns. But we want to control the process. Think about, we read a book called The Toyota Way. How is it that the Toyota factories were bombed in World War II, but in 25 years, they were exceeding the performance of, say, Ford and General Motors and Chrysler? they did it by having a very efficient assembly system, putting all the parts together. And if you have a process and there's an issue, deal with it early in that conveyor belt. I'm speaking metaphorically. Than to let 2 more weeks or 3 more weeks go by before you end up having another project meeting with your outside architect. So it's very impressive, our corporate office.
That's good. How's the leasing activity? You know, you've got several projects here. What's going on with the Houston multifamily market as a whole, big picture?
I think there are some good performers and there are some great performers, I think, and there are some mediocre performers. I think on average, it's fine. It doesn't have the zest of, say, Austin, which is beyond belief, what's happened in that city.
Very strong, very strong.
It's the Californication of that city. So, you know, when they're talking about high rises, so this high rise that the neighborhood dubbed the Ashby had, I think, in this agreement with the city of Houston, it came up with 21 stories. We're building 20 stories. That building had 5 stories of garage. We have 3 stories of garage. I mentioned 232 units. We have 134. Totally different building and clientele we're building to. But in Austin,
before I forget, go tell me about Austin.
I was going to say, in Austin, they're building high rises at 50, 60 stories now there. The downtown has the highest density of the highest rise buildings in the state. Okay. So
it's incredible. That's so hot down there that they're announcing so many buildings, residential and office, you know, new high rise tower for Google and Facebook, and, you know, TikTok has off. All these major tech firms have landed there, and with
that's right.
He's huge, you know.
You bring Elon Musk into the picture, and all of a sudden there's a whole other thing, and wherever he's doing his work. But the land's trading there on the downtown half block sites for $1,500, $1,800 a square foot. That is not the pricing we have, and it's because they're allowed to go 25 to 1 FAR. Whereas in Dallas, much of the uptown district where we build, you know, it's 4.5 to 1. By zoning. Then you have to go through this whole zoning process. So Austin's driven by creating a higher density, mixed use, walkable city. You know, frankly, in Houston, there's no limit. We could have announced a 50-story high rise there, you know, and, you know, not abide by those restrictions, say, this is what we're doing. And by the way, you don't have zoning here, so we have the right to do it. And if you want to
be hearing from the Ashby Highrise sign, there'd be more Ashby Highrise signs today if you did that.
Exactly.
50 stories.
We want to be welcome to the neighborhood because, in one sense, some of them may not like the idea now, but once their friends start to move in and talk about how beautiful it is and how wonderful it is to have this lock and lead lifestyle, but not compromise their idea of luxury.
Okay,
but you're going to start moving in.
But you have no retail here like the former project. No
Correct.
Shop, there's no shops. No, it's
no, sir.
Pure residential, and it's a little bit shorter. And you've got 134 units versus what's it,
232 before.
Almost 100 units smaller. So you've softened it up in that regard. So that, and one thing I did want to, 2 things here. The setback from the property lines, you know, there has been discussed. I think they did finally pass an ordinance talking about, you know, how far you can build close to the actual property line. That was one thing. And I want to come back and ask you about, you said this earlier, cars coming in and out of that project. First, tell me about that and the setback rule. How far are you set back? Is this different from what, you know, the Ashby Highrise was?
So we're building we're respecting a setback and a landscape courtyard in front because that's what's in the Declaration of Restrictive Covenants. That's what we're abiding by. And, I would have preferred maybe a circle drive, porte cochere, drop off right in front. I believe in an urban development. You build closer to the street. You respect the street. You respect the sidewalk. We're called StreetLights Residential. We love streetlights. We like wide sidewalks. My first two books I read when I entered development in 1996 with Robert Shaw, who officed next to me at a company, Columbus Realty Trust.
I don't know Robert.
Yeah. You know Robert?
I've had lunch with him a couple of times. He built a project here in the village area.
He did
a while back.
And by the way, that was a condominium, and I'm not sure how that turned out. In fact, I met Randall Davis with Robert because at Columbus we had formed a joint venture. This is right when I was coming in July of '96. Randall Davis, the hotel that was downtown. It was the Rice Hotel redevelopment. So Randall needed money. We came in and did that. So
you were with Post at that time?
It was called Columbus Realty Trust. It was it's launched out of the Staubach company. And
Robert was a cowboy, just like Roger.
He played football. I used to joke after I, went off on my own after him and said, all the things I've done well, I learned from you, and the things I ignored, I've done poorly. He is really an excellent developer. So to have that experience, and I was really brought in to take the uptown Dallas model that Robert had been the pioneer and export it to other cities. And then about a year after that, year and a half, Post came in and bought Columbus. Robert left, and I remained, and I was the director of new markets for Post around the country. So, I travel around with John Williams on the plane, or, show him what we have going on in the West. So we were, that Post was the leader. And John Williams said, I'm a born again new urbanist. That's why he bought Columbus. And of course, the quality of the inventory, it was very innovative to build above grade parking structure, just a wrap concept. That was totally new. Robert's first deal was underground parking called the Meridian, 134 units. So he's really a genius. He's amazing, Robert. And then Doug, having the background with Gables and in his leadership role, what an incredible developer. And Tom, so it's just such a beautiful thing to work with them. But I want to say that as an intellectual idea, Robert said, intellectually, because I asked him once, why did you get into this? He said, I read two books. There was a recession. We have those. And this one was in the late 80s. So 87, 88, 89, 90, it. SNL Crisis. And he read Christopher Alexander's A Pattern Language and Jane Jacobs' The Death and Life of Great American Cities. So he said, read these. You're going to move over from the transaction side. I had a company I founded called the Apartment Group after leaving Staubach. We went out in the hallway right next to the office in the same building, started that company. And I read those and I was just so smitten with it. It's like someone introduced the game of golf and they get obsessed with playing golf all the time. I just loved what I was reading from Alexander Pattern Language. And then, Jane Jacobs, the idea of the ballet of the street or ballet of the sidewalk. We respect that. We're not a developer just trying to build our little postage stamp piece of property and ignore what's around us. We, sometimes, Ralph, the open space, the common area, the public space is very significant as the building is. And that's something important to us as well. So
when you talk about, I guess, simple term, the walkability
yes,
that new urbanism brings. But when you have, it sounds like there's might be kind of a slight design conflict or something between you need to have this big setback and things. And
We do.
at the 1717 business.
That's correct. I would have done it differently.
Is that in conflict with what some of these new urbanist principles?
Yes. I mean, again, we decided that we would respect what was the agreement between the city that is a recorded instrument on the property, than to snub our nose at it. Even though the neighbor's lawsuit came after that, it's on the books, it runs with the property. Let's respect it. You know, our land use attorney doesn't believe we have to, but we are. So, but ideally, yes, we would build where there's a better relationship to the sidewalk and the street for the building entrance and all that. You know, we have a driveway off of Bissonnet into a porte-cochere, but it's on the east side of the building. So likely going through sort of an arch entry. I believe you in development should always know, and this is a Christopher Alexander pattern. Put the front door where people can see it. Get to it. We'll have this great front door and say veranda out front, but that's if you're walking into the building. If you're driving, there's not a drop off, and ordinarily we would want that to be more visible than it will be. So, you know, here's the thing, Ralph. We don't deal with perfect conditions on any property. We don't deal with perfect laws, conditions, financial markets. We're just trying to solve problems in the best way with what we have. And I think the result will be well received.
Right now, you're looking at a groundbreaking. Can you do it this year?
We'll try, but we're pricing the design. We're at 100% development design. So we're at 100% DDs right now. We're pricing that. And we as a construction company know full well the challenges within the subcontractor market and the supply chain. So I don't know any other way to say it, but I think we're prudent in that we will certainly price again as we get into the point of construction drawings and GMAX. We do have a third-party architect engaged with us. We're the design architect. EDI. Oh yeah. Britt Perkins designed a lot of buildings. They're our co-architect on this. He's very familiar with the city codes, and we are wanting to update what we by right have to respect new codes, new ordinances, than to say we're just going to grandfather that. I mean, there might be an occasion where we might find we have to, but the goal would be to update all of that that's been approved. But we've submitted a foundation plan. We submitted as a revision. The permits are active. So we submitted a revised plan. But whether we meet the date, that's going to be determined by how the construction costs come in. We have a long list of institutional equity partners, Goldman, Prudential, Carlyle, MetLife, a number of people, a number that would like to invest with us. We haven't selected one yet, and we haven't even gone to the debt market yet, even though, we have 20 deals underway right now, Ralph. So, we have term sheets all over the place, but.
And you're here with Hunt companies.
Yes.
Is this part of the H.L. Hunt family?
It is not. The original partner for StreetLights which is the A.G. Hill family office. They own Highland Park Village. They used to own Hunt Petroleum. So they were, they sold Hunt Petroleum in 2008 when all of us in real estate were suffering, and made $3 or $4 billion, I think, $3 billion, and wanted to disperse some of those profits into ventures with sponsors that they wanted to do business with. And they wanted to invest with Doug and Tom to launch StreetLights. And I came in a couple months later. So I was the third person that came in, and it was to go to Austin, where, you know, my first building was in the Domain, and the second one, a high rise called the Catherine, that Hunt was the partner of ours on. It was right behind the Hyatt.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Off South Congress.
I know exactly where it is. I was at a conference at that Hyatt, you know, recently, and so I know I've seen the Catherine, and of course the land around it's going crazy.
It is with what Endeavor wants to do at the Austin Statesman.
Getting ready to go up. Stream Realty is active over there, right within 50 feet of the Catherine. So that but it's cool.
Their office building, yeah. So it's turned out in our top floor has just a majestic view of downtown and down, you know, Town Lake, east and west. But Hunt was the partner. We built it, we leased it. It's not the business plan on this one where we would sell it after we lease up. And we sold it, and, you know, it was a very profitable development for us. And today, who knows what it would sell for. I mean, we just had a trade down in Austin. I think it was around 900,000 a unit.
Oh,
and I need to get the average unit size, but I'm sure it was more than 700, 750.
That's big dollars. That's big. But hey, you're looking good. All right, Stephen Meek, we're looking forward to what's going to happen there at 1717 Bissonnette, with the site that so many people have called, you know, the Ashby site for so long, even though the official name has never been that. This is going to be called the Langley, and we'll be waiting for for a groundbreaking. Hey, it could be before Christmas. Who knows? But
could go into next year. But we're going to take our time, make sure our prices are right, and you know how fluctuating they've been.
The pricing has been pretty fluctuating. I'd hate to be estimating the construction costs on your project right now. But everything's going up fast every day. So
it is, but we build in a significant escalation and contingency to, you know, it's priced at X today. If we had that building open today, what the rents would be, but then at the time of the start and the finish, we escalate it. So it may be enough, but, you know, maybe not. Again, I think about our business. I've learned enough lessons, had enough bad experiences to have some good experiences. And I like to think about from Proverbs that, you know, the plans of the mind belong to man, but the Lord directs the steps. We're doing everything we can that is within our control to develop absolutely the highest luxury multifamily building in a small community of, you know, not all people over 55 or 50, but, you know, they're probably more leaning to the empty nester. You know, I think we'll be really proud of it, you know, once we get that launch. So when is it absolutely certain? Nothing is certain. But we don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow. So with what we have, we're going to do our best.
The end is always near. Who knows? All right. Thank you very much, Stephen Meek. And this will be up. We be sure to follow us on realtynewsreport.com. We have a lot of news there reported daily, and be there. Check out this podcast, and we're expanding it. It's going good, and we're really glad that you stopped by, Stephen, and we're looking forward to seeing what happens there with this important project. So thank you. And
I hope I have the opportunity to see you in person, Ralph. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for inviting me today.
You bet. We'll get together soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.